I want Hasura intelligence. Like I want the intelligence of my company. I want to codify what makes my business unique, my strategic and competitive insight. I want to codify that.
Welcome to the Imagine AI Live podcast. I'm your host, Chris Madden, and today we have with us Tanmai Gopal. Tanmai is the CEO and co-founder of Hasura AI, and he recently spoke at the Imagine AI Live conference, but I am so glad to have him here on the podcast to discuss more. So Tanmai, tell our audience how you're doing and what it is you're building.
Hey, Chris. Hey, everybody. So glad to be here. We're working on helping AI become reliable. That's and kind of key idea is to capture the unique things that are there about your business and teaching that to AI so that it can be reliable. That's what we work on. I think reliability is kind of one of the big things holding back a lot of AI adoption. So that's the business.
Yeah, so Hasura data management, and it takes your company's data and like safely stores it, processes it, organizes it, and so that it can be better used with AI.
So we don't actually touch your data, and that's I think one of the most important things, because moving data around is very expensive and it's got security issues and it's challenging. And then also if you want to kind of change your approach or do different things, it's a very heavy lift to move data around. So what we do instead is we learn everything about your data, right? So it's kind of think of it this way. Imagine that you're in an organization and you hired somebody, you hired like a analyst, right? Or you hired an engineer, and they, they're smart, they're capable, and it's day zero for them. And then you ask them to go do a thing, right? You're like, hey, you're in healthcare or something, right? And you're like, hey, tell me the patient readmission rates for like people with this medical procedure code, something or the other in this particular area. And you go and ask them to do this. And like, they're very smart, they're capable, but they can't do that, right? Like they don't know enough about your data to even do that. And so what PromptQL does is it captures all of this kind of meta information about your data, the tribal knowledge that exists in people's heads. So that's kind of what we do, and trying to help kind of capture that information so that then AI can access your data reliably, right? Like that is kind of what enables that reliable data access.
Great. Can you talk about some of the companies that you work with and maybe a use case of the problems that they have and how you're helping them?
I can't name companies yet. We'll be doing a few press releases with them in the coming days. But to give you a sense of like the scale, for example, a Fortune 100 doing about, let's say, $16 billion of revenue for one of their segments, where they have like a 25,000 people sales org, right? Or a public healthcare company, 10 billion market cap, looking at, kind of powers radiology clinics everywhere, all over the world, but primarily in the US and in Europe. E-commerce companies doing about 2.5 to 3 million orders a day in terms of transaction volume. So these are the kinds of like just a sampling of like very, very kind of horizontal, and all of their use cases are a little bit different, right? So for example, in the e-commerce situation, the use case for a reliable AI is to essentially say, imagine you're kind of like one of the business people who's responsible for the number of transactions that you see in a particular segment, in a particular category. So, because it's quick commerce, you're thinking of things like dairy or groceries or FMCG, like fast moving consumer goods. So you have these different kind of segments and categories. And one of the things that these hundreds of category managers have is this question that says, so yesterday I was supposed to do $1 million worth of transactions on the dairy segment, but we are at 80%. Why? Like what happened? Right? Or this week, our orders in Seattle declined. Like, what happened? And this is not a straightforward question to answer at all, right? This is a very simple question to ask, but a really tough question to answer, because this answer is going to be in a variety of data sources. You'll have a dashboard that shows you that you were at 110% of your target or 80% of your target. So you have a dashboard that tells you that. But how do you go from there to like what the root cause was? And now there's hundreds of people who own these categories, right? Trying to do this kind of root cause analysis. And each root cause analysis, like to explain everything that can happen, it could be external factors, internal factors, to explain the possibility of all of those things to a data analyst in your team is going to take time. And then for them to actually go do that work is going to take even more time, right? So net, what's going to happen is your insight that you wanted from yesterday, you're going to get that a week from now, if you're lucky. right? In my experience, when I was talking to the CEO there, they were like, it actually takes us, like, I asked a question 3 weeks ago as the CEO, and I still haven't gotten an answer.
Yeah.
So and it's not like people don't want to do the work. It's just like that's the backlog that everybody has. There's so many high priority things, there's burning issues, right? There's so many things you're doing. But this impact, if I could have a 1% improvement, right? Every like percentage point of improvement in your ability to hit your target, right? That has a $10 million impact if you're $1 billion business, right? Just a percent of improvement has that impact, right? So just increasing that productivity and insight by a percentage instantly has a $10 million impact. So that's kind of like a set of use cases on that side. And then a very different kind of use cases on the automation side, for example, a healthcare company, where you have this kind of situation where I call it the automation paradox. And the automation paradox is this kind of situation where, and this applies to all of you who are working in companies, and you'll be able to spot these automation paradoxes, right? And what you'll see is, you'll be like, man, I wish this was automated in my company. I wish like this thing was automated and I know exactly what needs to be automated, right? But I can't automate it. Like I don't have the know-how to automate it. I know what needs to be done, but I can't automate it. And the person who can automate it has no idea what to automate, right? So you have these kind of developers, let's say, and engineers who are building software for operators who are taking calls and helping patients book appointments for different kind of scans, right? Like an ultrasound or a mammogram or an X-ray or whatever it is, right? And there's lots of complicated business rules. It's like, oh, if you're this insurance vendor in Arizona, then don't do this. But if you're over 30 and you're a male and you're experiencing symptoms, do this. But if you've been to the clinic before, and if it's this family of clinics, then do this. And everybody's codes are different. So it's so complicated to do this, right? And there is a business person who knows exactly all of these complicated rules, but they can't automate it, right? They have the know-how, but they can't automate. And then you have these engineers and developers who are sitting off in a silo, right? Who cannot automate, like who can automate, but cannot understand the complexity of every single clinic, every single federal regulation and how it changes, right? So you have this automation paradox where the people who can automate can't build it, and the people who can build it can't automate it, right? And again, just to give you a sense of the scale here, right? It's incredible because if a call takes about 12 minutes to schedule, saving that off by 3 minutes has a $50 million impact, because that means that you can do more calls with the same capacity of operators that you have, right? And that's the pressure that's building up in wanting to automate that, but it's not possible to automate. So this is kind of another place where our AI comes in and says, if we understand enough about your business and we understand exactly all of the context of your business, then we'll enable the non-technical user who's not stupid. They just don't have the expertise. They'll enable the business user to translate that automation that's in their head that they know everything about into reality, but just do that themselves, ship that in production and go, right? And so that's kind of like the second family of use cases around automation, right? The first family is kind of around decision making, and the second is around automation. I rambled on for a bit, but does that make sense?
Yeah, those are great examples. And you're talking about, saving 1% of efficiency and improving the process, and you can get so much return for your clients and your customers. But you imagine that this, you could save more than 1% eventually too. And
Correct.
I'm confused about maybe the onboarding process. Like, how long does this take for? I'm sure it depends on the complexity of the client and how big they are and how much data. But how are you structuring the data? Like, how are you helping so that AI can best understand the organization's complexity?
Yeah, so it takes about a week for us to set this up. What happens is we kind of take our AI platform and we call our AI platform PromptQL. And our goal is to get our AI platform to speak, let's say, for example, your Google or Apple. What we want to do is we want to get the AI to speak Apple QL. Instead of speaking like the base language that it does, we want it to plan, reason, act, and execute an Apple QL or Google QL, or actually more precisely in these large companies, it's more like that particular division. It's like, for example, if I was Apple, but I was running, like, say, supply chain, Apple supply chain QL. That's kind of like, we want to teach it that language, right? Like where your data is, what it means, what the different kinds of procedures you typically do are, what your conventions are. Now, it takes us about a week to set this up. What we do is we set this up in your kind of environment, in, let's say, your VPC or on our dedicated VPC, and that's the AI platform. We connect that to your data sources. We don't export or replicate that data. And then you give us an eval set. You give us an eval set of 50, 100, 200 questions that are hard questions or tasks that if the AI could do, it would mean it would be impact for you, right? Like those are the kind of tasks. In fact, we don't talk to people where if they give us tasks and they're just like Q&A search kind of task, we're not even doing this. Like this is so simple. We can do it in like an hour. We're not even interested. So we'll take like high impact tasks. And the reason why I mean we're not interested is because we believe that you haven't matured enough in your AI journey yet to think of like the hard problems that you need to solve. Not because it's like it's a bad thing. You should definitely do it, but you need to think of higher value problems you can solve. So then what we do is we feed our AI system, our AI platform, all of these questions, and we turn it on in like a deep research mode. And what it does in this kind of deep research, deep search, deep planning mode is that it tries out hundreds of different hypotheses to try to solve that problem. So kind of analogous to imagine you hired like this really smart analyst or engineer, right? It's day zero and you gave them a hard problem, but you told them take like work 24/7 as hard as you possibly can to try to solve this problem. And so they're like, oh, okay, cool. You have thousands of databases. No worries. Let me go look at all of the tables in there. Let me sample them. Let me see the data that it contains. Does this answer the question? No, this still doesn't answer the question. Does this one do it? Oh, no, this one doesn't do it either. And they like spend a lot of time just trying to answer it. And then you'll guide them a little bit. You'll be like, I see why you think that that's where the delivery information is stored. But actually, we store more up-to-date delivery information here. And then you give it a little bit of guidance, right? But it keeps searching, it slogs its butt away, trying to answer your question. And then through that, when it arrives at an answer that you like, right? This process of what it did has been captured. Now our learning layer looks at those runs, looks at what the work it did to get to that answer that you liked, where we kind of like maxed out the eval set, where we did a good job on the eval set. We take that data and we put it back into the system, and then we teach the LLM to say, this is what we learned. This is what we learned about where deliveries are. This is what we learned about how to calculate readmission rates. This is what we learned about how to calculate a gross transaction value, right? These are the things that we learned. And so now we take that learning and we capture that in kind of like think of it like a agentic semantic layer, right? Like the semantic layer itself is agentic. So it's continuously trying to learn more and more. And then we kind of feed that back into the AI system. So this process takes about a week. And this process of but anyway, I'll stop there, but that's kind of what this looks like.
So you mentioned high impact tasks there that a lot of companies aren't thinking about, high impact tasks that AI can help out a lot in. Can you name some of those high impact tasks that companies may not be thinking about?
So, for example, largely situations so one of those situations is what I call the automation paradox situations, especially for automation kind of tasks. It's all of those tasks where you're currently training human beings, you're onboarding a lot of human beings and you're giving them a lot of business context, and then you're putting them in front of customers, right? Or you're making them do a kind of task. So this is kind of one of those ripe situations where if you had reliable AI, you could have really high impact. Right? Because a lot of like Gen AI, the way people are thinking about it is that they're using it for generative AI use cases. They're not actually using it to solve like reasoning business logic use cases, right? So in all of those cases where you have business logic trapped inside people's heads, that's a great high impact task to do, right? Like the high impact task for the healthcare company is automatically suggest the right procedure code based on the information that the patient has given to you. That's the high impact task, right? That's the articulate, because this is the thing that takes 3 minutes for the operator to like click on 10 tabs and read their manuals and look up codes and do. So that's the process that takes a long time. And that's the articulation of this high impact task. But it's essentially places where you're doing a lot of training on humans to learn the business logic to fulfill some business goal. And those are places where you'll see a lot of automation paradox kind of situations, right? The other place on the decision-making side is, I would say it's largely situations where you feel that if a really, really good executive of the business, right, like a CXO or a VP, like somebody who's like really good, like not just like a token head manager kind of person, right, but somebody who's really gets the business. If that was the person who was making day-to-day decisions, right, if we could afford that, how much better would the business be, right? So in those kinds of situations where you want every single person in your company to have executive decision-making power or the ability to make decisions of the quality that an executive would, that's kind of another place where you can do high impact stuff, right? Where you're kind of saying that like, oh, this person who's running the category, like for dairy or shampoos or whatever it is, right? This person can actually make decisions of a quality level that represent what like the head of that business unit would be making. Because they're spotting patterns. They're like, oh, if the digital volume is down and there's an event that's happening here that's going to impact our delivery times, let me go do this instead. Right. But I know that like this brand is generally declining. Like nobody cares about drinking Coke anymore, but people are like, gradually I'm seeing an up in health products. And so I need to like correct for that in this geography, because now this geography is trending upwards on health product, but trending down on soda, right? And then make a change. Now, this is a decision that you would typically expect an executive to make, because these are like tougher decisions. But if you feel like when you see that if I just had better people, could they have made better decisions? And then how you get better people is by giving them tools by giving them intelligence, right? By encoding the intelligence of your business and giving it to them. I would say like executive decision-making intelligence is one area, and automation paradox is kind of the second area. Like those are the two broad areas where a lot of high impact tasks are kind of waiting to get solved.
And so, it sounds kind of maybe complicated from the back end of everything you're doing to structure and like build your product and everything. But
right.
From the user's perspective, when they're logging in, is it like they're using this instead of ChatGPT, and this has like like all their data?
Correct.
And
exactly, it's just that. So it's like you're using it for helping you do like the decision making stuff, like, oh, help me find out why this happened, or what I should do about this, or do some analysis for me and like make some charts and help me like share that report or whatever, right? Like there's like that kind of thing. And then there's the other kind where you use it as if you were talking to an engineer, where you're like, oh, automate this for me. Like take all of these calls and then automatically extract information and update my CRM for me. Like go. And just do it. Like as if you're talking to an engineer. It's like trying to be your analyst on demand, and it's trying to be your engineer. Now, usually the people who can afford an engineer or an analyst on demand are like CEOs, right? They're like, oh, do this for me. Drop everything and like automate this, or like drop everything and do this analysis. But now each person has it in the org.
Well, I want to get into the backstory a little bit of the company and who you are. Could you tell us like your origin story? It's one of my favorite questions to ask me, like from young age, what you wanted to be and how it evolved.
Yes. I wanted to be an inventor when I was in school. I wanted to like invent things and like make new things that are cool. And where that took me was kind of realizing as I went through university, and I gravitated towards computer science because it kind of democratized that ability to do invention, to make things. That feedback loop that you get when you invent a product with nothing but an idea in your head is amazing, right? Like what a feeling. And I kind of gravitated towards computer science, got into a fair bit of depth with both my bachelor's and master's, and started a bunch of different businesses. I first started a consulting business to help people build things, just to kind of get more grounded in industry, because I didn't kind of know what the problems that people out in the world are facing. So I started a consulting business, helped like really large companies migrate at the time from, monoliths to Docker and Kubernetes based services. Our team became one of the global experts on a lot of Docker Kubernetes stuff. We're committing to Docker and Kubernetes pre 1.0, and that was amazing. What we kind of realized during that work is a lot of problems are getting solved, but the big problem that is not getting solved is data access for applications. So data access for applications is not like development is becoming easy. Deployment is becoming easier. That's great. It's not perfect, but it's going to get better. But one of the big missing pieces as we work with people was realizing that like how applications access data, that's very time consuming and broken. People need to manually build APIs and write business logic to do it, right? And so what we did was we took a stab we created a product and a platform that automated the creation of a lot of data APIs on top of people's existing data. And we released that as an open source project a few years ago. And that was the company, and that was Hasura, the company, and went absolutely viral with developers, well over 1 billion downloads now. And this was kind of developers just using that to saying, if I just point this to my data and I get an API, that's awesome. I can get on to the business of building an app, right? And the data APIs would take care of performance and join and authorization and security and stuff like that, right? And that kind of got us a lot of traction. About 50% of the Fortune 100 are open source users. Three of like the Fortune 5 are customers with that, right? And then 2 years ago, we realized that APIs and development as we know it is dead. It's just dead. And like it is, in 5 years, it's not going to matter anymore, right? It's just absolutely not going to matter anymore. Like none of this stuff that we're worried about is even a concern. Like nobody cares. And what is going to happen is that AI systems are going to need to talk to data. And when apps needed to talk to data, what was missing was APIs. But when AI needs to talk to data, what is missing? Like, why is that not working? What's kind of a fundamental root cause there? So about a year and a half ago, I spun up our research lab, got a few ex-Google folks, our founding engineers, put that together, started that. And then we released PromptQL early this year, where we kind of nailed this problem of the fundamental issue in AI talking to your data is reliability. That's the business problem. And the technical problem is that AI doesn't know enough about your business to be able to do things reliably. That's the fundamental issue. Like AI can keep becoming easy. Like AI will become smarter. But even if you have like an IQ 500 person in your org and you ask them this question of like, what's the patient readmission rate for like MM350 in clinic B2? Like they won't know what to do. Not because they're not smart, but because they don't know enough. And so that's kind of the journey that took us to PromptQL. And the traction that we're seeing there is absolutely amazing. Like it pales to anything we did before. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, because I thought we were doing okay before, but this is a whole new thing.
That's incredible. I just got goosebumps hearing that, and that you kind of saw this problem of how to safely access for AI to access data, and you built that product, and it's very, very exciting. How big is your team now, your org?
We're about 130 people.
Wow. Amazing. And are you offering other services and consulting to these companies that you team up with?
The idea in the way that we do it is that, so we don't break it up into kind of product and services. I think that's kind of one of the contrarian ideas that we have in the way that we operate, is that our job is to help like a foundation model learn like the unique context of your business, right? That's the job. Now, the product does all the heavy lifting, but depending on the maturity of your own organization, depending on the domain that you're in, the way that that gets built and deployed inside your organization, the way the learning loops are set up, right? I mean, I call it a learning loop, but like it may or may not actually involve an RL learning loop. But I mean like that loop of, oh, let's try a thing. And then we realize, this is the best way of doing it, and then go feed that back. So the next time we do it, it gets it right in one shot instead of like spending 100 hours trying to do it. This process is very dependent on the organization, the domain, the maturity, the team, etc. that we're talking to. And so we have a very strong team who helps integrate and realize kind of that platform for our customers. And typically this involves a very kind of consultative approach where we have to kind of understand deeply what the customer is doing, what they are, and kind of set them on a path to success. The way that it works out and the way that we think about it is that we're continuously replacing those field engineers as well, those forward deployed engineers, as the industry now calls it, right? These FDs, they are still working at 70, 80% margins in terms of their revenue to cost, right? So our FDs are extremely highly comped. They're like comped like a Google engineer, right? That's what they're comped like that. So they're very, very well paid and they have the opportunity to make a lot of money. But the margins that they work with, they're working at 70, 80% margins, meaning that they're doing work, but they're kind of also automating their own work. You know what I mean? Like when we set PromptQL up for customers, we use a side PromptQL, a meta PromptQL that is helping us automate everything that we are doing with the customer. You know what I mean? It's really, really interesting, right? And really helped us do so much with a small, high quality team. That's been like the model.
That's incredible. Well, if you could just paint that like this, it seems like you're at this point where you could have some really impressive trajectory here and maybe accelerated growth. And I'm wondering your roadmap here, you just getting more enterprise level companies on board. Is there a plan for small and medium-sized businesses as well?
Yeah. So I think like what we're doing is we're starting with the large businesses first. We're starting with the largest problems the first, right? So for example, we work with a bunch of startups, very small teams, but they're solving like a really hard problem with AI where they're solving problems at a different layer, but there's a certain domain intelligence that they need to build that we work on with them. So it's still a very, very high value problem for them. That's the same, like revenue wise, etc., and ticket size wise, it comes up the same as what an enterprise would do too. But the way that it is structured is a little bit different for them and for large companies. So we kind of attach ourselves to very high value problems only. We try to like not do the simple generative use cases, right? Like, oh, help me write an email and then send it to somebody or whatever, right? Like, it's like, that's fine. But as long as the email is mission critical, right? And content and what it needs to have and stuff like that. Not if it's just an email. So that's kind of how it's structured.
In hiring today, you're growing business. I'm sure you're interviewing people. What is the thing that people may be lacking in today's AI world? Or conversely, what are you looking for?
On the technical side, we're looking for people who have really good first principles in building software, in databases, in computer science in general, but specifically like the systems and application layer. Very solid first principles on the computer science front that you might have been because of your educational background or because of your industry background. And so that is what we're really looking for. So that's one aspect of it. And then the second aspect that we deeply test for is how good you are as a team player. So now that's become a lot more important as opposed to previously where it used to be like, how good are your IC chops? Now it kind of doesn't matter how good your IC chops are. What matters more is that, so if you join this team, will you make this team like 3x more productive? Like, will you be a multiplier or will you be an additive? Like, will you add to the team or will you multiply the team? So we're searching for multipliers, right? We're not searching for somebody who adds to the team. We're searching for somebody, well, you know how it is, right? When you're working with somebody good and you're like, hey, like, you let's say you're a good engineer, I'm a good engineer. And then Chris and Tanmai work together and then we do stuff. But then you meet like this pair where like Chris and Tanmai work together and they're like, holy shit, that's a dream team. Like, just look at them, like ship product, look at the quality of the work that they're doing. Look at their product thinking. It's insane. Like right out the gate, it's insane. Like, no, one of them couldn't have done it. You couldn't have done it by yourself. I couldn't have done it. But together we just create this multiplier effect. So that a lot of our hiring has now kind of become like, how do we suss that out?
Interesting. Very interesting. One final question that we'll wrap it up here. I'm wondering if everything goes to plan with your company, what's the rosiest picture? How big could it be? And then also, what does that mean for the economy at large? Like what it is that you're unlocking potentially in businesses and maybe replacing as well?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think the scope of what we're doing is essentially infinite. The way that we think about our business as we grow, as we kind of like build upon successful incremental milestones, is essentially going to be that we're the people who are helping each company build their own intelligence. And I kind of call that, it's post-SaaS, in the sense that, you look at people like Salesforce or Snowflake or whatever, and you see what they're launching, and they're launching Salesforce intelligence. Like Snowflake yesterday announced Snowflake intelligence, right? And we're like, man, that's just not the right thing. Nobody wants Snowflake intelligence, right? I want Hasura intelligence. Like, I want the intelligence of my company. I want to codify what makes my business unique, my strategic and competitive insight. I want to codify that and have that be the value add to every single person in my company. That's what I want. I don't want Snowflake intelligence. What is Snowflake intelligence, right? Like, just because you're a data platform, you slammed some AI onto it. That's not what I want. I also don't want generic foundation model intelligence, which is, I want it, of course, but I need that to become my intelligence, right? So I feel like the roadmap for really building and powering your own LLMs is massive for us. And I think that will continue because the AI labs have their hands full in trying to build like superhuman intelligence. And their job gradually is going to become to codify generic use cases, right? Like, for example, they start codifying coding, right? Or like, for example, ChatGPT just launched audio transcription. So taking meeting notes, right? So they're already like trying to capture all the intelligence that are general purpose tasks for each individual in the world. So what are the tasks that 7 billion people will have that are common to all of them that I can now put in my general intelligence? That's what the AI labs are doing. And what we're doing is we're saying, cool, let's take that, let's make it learn your business and let it be like your business's intelligence powered by your business's language, right? It's like your business's LLM powered by your business's language, right? And the learning techniques to make that happen are pretty complicated, right? It could be in context, it could be fine-tuning, it could be post-training, whatever those methods are, depending on your domain, doesn't matter. The goal is to capture that, right? And so that's kind of like how I think about where we're going. I think in terms of like an economic impact, what I really want to see is I want to live in a world where there's no like data platform or dev platform that exists, and the teams that exist around them don't exist. There are no developers, there are no analysts, right? Like, this is not a thing that an organization needs to have. What you do have is you have people who can build analyst intelligence or decision-making intelligence or automation intelligence. Like you need the people to help like groom and nurture and maintain that little AI intelligence that you have that does automation for you and decision-making for you. So you need those people, kind of like what happened to DBAs, right? Like one person who worked on like one database, and then you had one person who worked on 100 databases when you had the cloud. Same thing. So it's like one developer who is maintaining intelligence to work on 100 different automation projects, one analyst who's working on the intelligence to power 100 different analyst initiatives, right? So that's the economic, like the way that I see the version of economic impact, the way is the operating plan change. The way that I want our customers' operating plan to change is that literally their budget changes to say, I just don't need this anymore and I'm going to invest here. And then what I want to see and what I hope to see is that all of that actually goes into doing good things for consumers and businesses, like all of the things that frustrate you about Amazon or Walmart or Walgreens or whatever, right? Any of these businesses in your day life, your transportation thing, Uber, whatever you see in your life where you're like, man, why does this business not work? Like, why do they not care about me? Why can't they handle my exception use case, right? Like, why does it suck? Why does this doing business with this company suck, right? As a consumer, I want all of that energy and time to be translated into improving that. Improve the product and the business that you deliver to your customers. Start spending money there. Stop spending money on like the implementation detail of data platforms and development work. Like if I have to do another NPM init in my life, like I will shoot myself. I cannot upgrade TypeScript anymore. I'm done with upgrading TypeScript, right? Like I don't want to upgrade. I just want it to work. I think we're almost there.
Yeah, it's amazing what you're building, and it just makes me think about like the opportunity cost of not implementing, your company's intelligence as soon as possible and start building this up. And the people that aren't like, I'm just going to hold off on this AI thing for another year, another 2 years, and it's like, oh my god, you're going to be so far behind the other people that are implementing it.
Yeah.
Tanmai Gopal, it was amazing talking with you. And how can people find you on social media and your company as well?
I'm on the Twitters and I'm on the LinkedIns, so feel free to reach out. I might be a little bit slow, so feel free to reach out to me on email as well. My email is just my first name at PromptQL.io or first name at Hasura.io. Head over to PromptQL.io to see everything that we're doing with AI. So that's PromptQL, kind of like SQL, but your language that you create on the fly. So PromptQL, and just reach out to us from that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining the Imagine AI Live podcast, and talk to you again in the future. I hope to talk soon.
Thanks, Chris.